Our last talk for today is with Harold Greene. It's called Handmade, My Life and Craft. Harold Greene is a custom furniture artisan based in Southern California who specializes in truly memorable furniture design. Since 1978, Harold has been handcrafting successful works of functional art that people just need to own. His work is meant to be seen and has been featured nationally in galleries, museums, and television. So without further ado, I present to you our next presenter, Harold Greene.
Thank you. I want to thank Adam Kessler first for inviting me to be a judge for this show, and also Adria, who invited me to speak here. And so I'm very happy to be here. You guys are welcome to ask questions as I go along. So whatever comes up, it's very casual. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I started woodworking, I would have to say, at a pretty early age. My brother used to take me, there I am at 3 with my little puppy dog. So when I was just 3 years old, my brother would take me up to a wood factory in the town where I lived, Harbor City, and they had a scrap bin out back. And we would collect the scraps from the bin, and we would make stuff. We made, cars and trucks. We made bows and arrows. We made the arrows from the local weed stalks that were growing, and we smashed bottle tops over the tip of them for the weight. And they worked really great. So that was kind of my first woodworking experience. My first actual formal training in woodworking was in 7th grade. And I had 7th grade wood shop. I had great instructors. My woodworking teacher was Mr. Nakakura. I remember that. But I also had a great metal shop teacher, Mr. Kogan, and also a great electronics teacher, Mr. Patterson. I remember these teachers because they were so helpful and so knowledgeable in showing you how to do what they were teaching you, and they were very patient. So I got a lot from all of those things, and all of those skills that I learned in 7th grade, I still use today. So so there is my big brother. He's the one who took me up to the wood factory, and we made stuff. He was an excellent craftsman in his own right. He was part of Woodcraft Rangers. He built these plastic models, of airplanes with a million pieces. And I always watched him. He had very good hands. He was also a musician. And so we always did projects together, and that was from a very early age. So along the way, shortly after high school, I was a musician, but this group that you see here, a group called Magnum, it took that to a whole nother level, and it was really before I started doing woodworking formally or building things for people. I grew up in a very musical family, and we all learned how to play at least 2 instruments. And so in this group, I played bass, and even though I was a guitarist originally. And around this time, I was already dabbling in making furniture for myself. We're talking 1975, 1976. Probably, if this group had been successful, it was not for a lot of reasons that I won't go into, but I would be along a different path. I would be a full-time musician, probably teaching, recording, performing. I got a lot of that in this, and it was a great experience. And I'm still a musician to this day. But my life took a different path shortly after this. So shortly after that, you can see I'm an LA City fireman here, and I'm hanging from a 6-story building that I'm about to leap down to the ground from. This was the training tower in Sherman Oaks for the recruits for the Los Angeles Fire Department. This is 1978. I was already into woodworking at this time, but this opportunity came along, and I couldn't pass it up. It was really good pay, great benefits. It was just a great opportunity. But I got through my probation, and I worked the job, and I thought, wow, I'm really missing something. I'm really missing the design aspect of my life. Because when you're becoming a fireman, it's completely all-encompassing. You don't think of anything else. It's highly, highly competitive. There were 5,000 candidates for essentially 53 jobs that came out of that pool of candidates, and I was one of them. And so when I told my fellow firefighters, my mom and family that I was going to quit and become a furniture maker, they were quite skeptical. In fact, they even called me down to fire department headquarters, and the chief of the fire department, okay, this is like, it's almost like the mayor, of Los Angeles. The chief of the fire department talked to me personally. He said, "Are you sure you want to leave all of this? We've invested a lot in you." He says, "We've invested a lot in you, son, and we really want you to, stick with us and see what you can make of yourself." And I says, "No, I really want to do art." And they were trying to keep a straight face, but I was pretty sure what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be a fireman who did woodworking on the side. I met a few guys like that in the fire department. And they were firemen, and they owned a gas station, or they owned a cabinet shop on the side. And just the idea of being something and then having that on the side was not really for me. And I understood that I was giving up a lot by leaving, but I did anyway. All the other guys that I went through class with, they were most excited about getting their first car, getting a really nice car. They all wanted a Porsche or a Corvette, and I thought, no, it's not worth it. And so I left, and I began pursuing furniture. So along the way, I met some really important people. This is Sam Malouf. And if you don't know who Sam Malouf is, he's an American woodworker originally from Lebanon. He did beautiful sculptural work. And I early on, I went to one of his seminars at his studio out in Alta Loma. And I was really inspired by his work and by him as a person. This particular slide is, I invited Sam Malouf to be a judge for a show that my group was putting on, and he accepted graciously, and I'm here thanking him for participating. So this particular chair was in that show, and I remember Sam Malouf sitting in the chair, and I'm a tall person, and so the chair I built kind of for my proportions. And so when Sam Malouf sat in it, his feet didn't touch the ground, and so he was somewhat critical of the ergonomics of the chair, and but I didn't I didn't say anything. I didn't say, Sam, you're too short. He probably would have just laughed. So we're getting into some of the things that I did early on. This was probably the mid to late 80s. I had kind of perfected some of my skills at that time, and there's a lot of elements in here that were important to my work. There's carving on the side rails underneath the handles, underneath the hand rests. There's a bronze flying dragon, which is done with the lost wax process, and I began doing bronze hardware, sculpting the pieces in wax and having my foundry cast them for me. And that's something that continues. There's bent lamination, which is the back rail. It has a curve to it, and it was done by building up layers of wood on a curved form. So lots of elements came together in this chair. Along the way also, I used a lot of urban timber. The urban timber kind of goes back to when I first started woodworking. I grew up on a street that had a tree, an acacia tree, and I had a tree house in that tree. And somewhere around 1967, 68, they widened the street and they cut the tree down, okay? And I was bummed, but I didn't think much about it. But probably 10, 12 years later, my mom said, hey, I have a piece of the wood from that old tree. And I thought, oh. And so she gave it to me, and it was a nice, small log. And so I tried to cut into it. It was really hard. I didn't have any tools to cut it, but I think I found like a handsaw, and I started cutting off pieces off this thing. And it was really, really hard wood, but it was really beautiful wood. And I thought, wow. I mean, somehow this wood survived for all this time, and it had no cracks in it. It was amazing. So I made a few objects out of this tree that I had my treehouse in, and I actually still have a piece of wood from that tree, which is really precious to me. But it opened my eyes to what the possibilities were for making things out of the trees that are just on our streets or in our backyards. And so I began to come across trees that were being cut down by, tree companies or gardeners. And I found people who could mill the wood for me. And I learned how to dry it. There were some fits and starts. I didn't really know how to keep it from cracking or how to keep the bugs out. So I wound up losing a lot of wood. But I did figure it out. There were articles about how to treat wood and how to preserve it and all that stuff that I found in Fine Woodworking magazine. And I began using quite a bit of urban timber, which I do to this day. It's a very important element in my work. This is a place called the Library Ale House in Santa Monica. And I built the front of this using FSC timber. It's like certified environmentally friendly timber. I wound up building it it was like a barn raising where all the joints are all mortise and tenon and dovetails. And it was physically strong. I mean, it was a structural piece, but it was very artistic. It encompassed all of my skills, especially handwork and hand cutting mortises and tenons and things like that. And I also did the interior of that restaurant, which is still there. Going back to the front, recently they actually painted the wood a if you can believe that. They painted it a brown color. Anyway, they had new owners. So that's the interior. Quite a few different kinds of wood we used. Chechen, maple, panga, all kinds of interesting woods that were all FSC certified. This is another example of the bronze casting I was telling you about. That leaf is a eucalyptus leaf. I went hunting through the park near my home, and I found the perfect eucalyptus leaf, and I made some drawings of it, and I actually turned that into a wax model, which I had my foundry cast to use as pulls for this table. And this table was featured in a fine woodworking article that I wrote about casting your own hardware. One thing that I do quite a bit is front doors, and they usually have some kind of carving on them. This particular door has a carving that was inspired by Torrey Pines, which is down in San Diego. And there's the detail of that. And there's another panel for a similar door of seaweed and a striped bass. This was inspired by my wife, who took me out kayaking to get a look at what the seaweed looks like that she swims through every day. And so she's an ocean swimmer. Right there she is. So I did the design upon her approval, and then I carved this seaweed and fish in it. So I've always, along the way, been doing musical instruments, primarily electric basses. Good timing for that music. Anyway, in this particular case, it's a 5-string bass. You can't see it from the picture, but it has a semi-arched body. It's a hollow body. It has a spruce top, quite a few different woods, maple, curly maple, quilted maple, ziricote, a couple other woods, lots of inlays, lots of binding, kind of a guitar that I kind of pulled out all the stops on all the techniques. And I still build basses for people today, but it's not my main thing. It's just occasionally. So this is a project that I designed for a client who's fairly regular. It's a outdoor tea house, and it has a water dragon. I'm going to go to the dragon itself. There we go. The client was very particular. He has these certain ideas about kind of a spiritual protector, and he wanted a very ferocious and protective character on the end of this beam that I created. It's actually the beam itself. The beam itself is a curved beam set in the ground with a base that has 1,500 pounds of concrete, has a custom stainless steel base that I had welded by a friend of mine. And it's a tapered laminated beam, which was very complicated to make. It used every clamp that I own, okay, to glue this up, literally. And then when I ran out of clamps, I was like getting, I have these rubber bands made out of inner tubes, you know. But I finally got it all glued together. And then, so then I carved it. The roof itself is copper. And my friend and fantastic metal artisan, Jason Barr, led the way on creating these waves and the dragon, the body of the dragon. And we actually came up with some new techniques in working copper. We created some tools where we could actually pull across the copper and actually indent shapes and raise shapes. It's really, it was really a phenomenal project to work with him. It was quite an experience. And so the part of it which you can't see, it's part of the dragon body, and I created a tool to make scales, and it has like about 5,000 scales on it, and it was really a fun project. Here's the underneath side. It's all Japanese joinery, all through mortise and tenons. Everything is cut by hand. The woods, we used Western red cedar, Port Orford cedar, Douglas fir, and redwood. It was a really fun project to make. And then I also built the furniture that you see there in the foreground. Some lounge chairs. Those are all antique and Port Orford cedar. So this is a warehouse that I worked in for a couple of years for a project that I did for the LA Harbor. It's a 50,000 square foot warehouse, and I built these tables, each of them weighing a ton. And so you can see the rigging that's there. And a friend of mine who recently passed away did this rigging, and he rigs for Disney. All of the exhibits and rides and things at Disneyland, Universal City, and all that stuff. So he's a brilliant rigger. He rigs actual boats too. And so we had to pick these tables up and move them. And so we figured out a way to do that with his help. And here are the tables. Here's one table. And each bench weighs about 400 pounds. They're all Douglas fir set on in. And so you're kind of sitting on the end grain of the Douglas fir. Project took a couple years to complete. And this is the setting. This is the downtown harbor in San Pedro. The tables are way in the background. You can't really see where they are, but it was quite an honor to be chosen to do this project. This is the bridge, the Japanese bridge at Descanso Gardens. I was asked by them to restore it. It was literally falling apart. In fact, the surface of the bridge had become so rotted that a woman put her foot right through the bridge, okay? And these are planks that are 3-inch thick Douglas fir, okay? And that's how badly they were rotted. She put her foot through. Fortunately, they didn't get sued. They asked me to restore it for their 50th anniversary. And I literally disassembled the whole bridge. You can see this is just a small example of the rot. The part that cradles the rail is completely rotted. The main posts, they actually had to be replaced. So each piece was carefully restored, sanded, and then painted by their crew. It was the project was supervised by a company that specializes in historical restorations. And anything that was less than 50% damaged had to be saved and restored. And so there were a lot of pieces, even the planks, I would fill them with like a water-based epoxy and sand them, and they were painted. So it was quite tedious and time-consuming, but everything came out great. It was done a couple of days before the actual anniversary, and everybody was happy. This is a piece that I did. I don't do that many spec pieces. I have so many custom orders that it's hard to get to pieces that I have in my head. I have notebooks of drawings that go back decades of things that I would like to build, but probably will never get to. But every once in a while, every couple years, I get to dive into a piece that I really want to do for myself. So this one is built from all urban timber. The sides are ash. The seat is elm, American elm. The back slats are sycamore. The tenons that go through the mortises are carob. All these woods came from within like a 7-mile radius of my house. You know, of course, when you cut this wood, you have to stack it carefully and cover it and dry it and babysit it for years before you can use it. And so you're always looking ahead when you're acquiring urban timber. You're always thinking, what am I going to use this for? What's the best use for this wood? And so sometimes what you think you're going to use it for, it doesn't always work out that way. But sometimes the perfect design matches up with the wood that you have. And I feel like this piece was one that worked that way. This is another piece that's made from urban timber. This is, I call this pepper chair. It's made from Brazilian pepper. And it's really striking because it has these black streaks in it. But that comes from the wood having cracked during drying. Brazilian pepper is very difficult to dry. And so my friend who was a miller, he said, I have this wood. He says, I don't think you can use it, but I'll just give it to you. And so when I got a piece of it and I cut it open with my bandsaw, and it has this beautiful pattern when you book match it. And so I thought, well, I'll try using the sawdust and I'll fill the cracks with the sawdust and epoxy. And it made these beautiful lines and patterns. And I knew exactly what I wanted to make with it. And so I made this chair. This chair was part of a museum show that I did for the city of Los Angeles. And this is one of my most recent signature pieces. This is a Chase Lounge. And this particular one is made of cedar of Lebanon. It was an urban tree. It was part of the Botanic Garden in Los Angeles that was, many of the trees were blown down by a big storm. And so I acquired it from the person who milled it and made this piece. Somehow I could visualize it before I even drew it or made it. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And it's one of my favorite pieces to this day. And this is my family, my wife in the green jacket, my mom in the red jacket, my sister in the black jacket, and me all the way there on the left. My mom always told me that I could do it. That I have those words in my head. You can do it. You can do it. She was always inspired me to try anything that I tried that I could succeed at it. She's in good health at 98. She'll be 99 in a couple of months. And my wife in the green jacket, Kathleen, who always supported me throughout thick and thin, and it's definitely thick now. And my sister, who is among other things, a lawyer, but also an appreciation of art, and has always encouraged me to push the limits of what I'm doing. And so I want to thank all those people who've helped me along the way. It's been a great journey, but it's one that will continue. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Yes. The question is, what do I plan to do with all the sketches that I may not get to? Wow, that's a hard question. I've been going through a lot of the older notebooks that I have, and in order to preserve them, I know that I'm going to have to digitize them, basically take photographs of them, because the paper probably won't hold up forever. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm pretty sure I won't be able to get to them, but maybe there's a way of getting things made, like having students make the designs. Maybe each one getting a small stipend in order to create it, and have a show like that, a student show where the students, build Harold Greene designs. We'll see. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.